Welcome to Mary Walter Radio, the podcast. How are you? I am Mary Walter, and I have a guest coming up here shortly that you should recognize. I think if you watch the show, if you watch the podcast, you know who this is. I have no idea if James is going to be here or not. He's got this new job, and I don't know where he is. So I have no idea what's going on with James. And my hair's a mess. Very tired. Okay, so but before I start, just some house cleaning. Please, subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it. I would like to thank, let's see, who do we have here? Eric, Gregory, James, Misty Girl Smith. I know who that is. Don and Kenny, our new subscribers. Thank you so much. Please like the podcast. Super important because if you watch and you don't like, it affects the percentage and it affects the algorithm. So really appreciate it if you would do that. You can always go back if you're watching on YouTube or on Getter, but you can watch old episodes on YouTube. So you can do that. Now, also, the audio is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for download. This podcast, Mary Walter Radio, you have to put in Mary Walter Radio on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you want to watch the Tuesday night podcast, which is Life with Mary Walter, you have to put in Life with Mary Walter. If you put in just Mary Walter, sometimes they don't both come up. I think it depends on how often you search on that as to whether they bring that up. So on Tuesday's podcast, Life with Mary Walter, as of right now, Sean Spicer is scheduled to be with us. Of course, he was supposed to be with us this past Tuesday, but everyone thought Trump was being indicted on Tuesday, so they rescheduled, which I totally understand. So I would assume it's going to be tenuous, depending on what happens with Trump. Everything is Trump. So we'll see what happens with that. I also would like to thank Zach and Evie because Zach is our number one fan. He's amazing, great guy. And Evie does all the graphics for me and he does all the social media, does a lot of social media stuff and just amazing. And also to Pete, I always forget to thank these people, so I want to make a point of doing it. Pete sends me stories and he sends me all sorts of stuff and for the shows, great content for the shows. And I really appreciate you guys. So thank you so much. Tomorrow, my plans changed just before we got here, so I was like crazy person. So I'm in for Todd Starnes tomorrow on the Todd Starnes Radio Network. It's over 30 stations, mostly in the South, but it's the flagship station is KWAM out of Memphis. If you go online and just look for KWAM, KWAM, or search tune in for KWAM, KWAM. You can listen to the show noon to 3 Eastern time. I'll be in for him. Joining me tomorrow will be Rita Cosby, who I love. Rita's a wonderful friend. I'm really happy Rita's going to be on with me. Congressman Andrew Clyde will be with me. We're going to talk about the TikTok hearings. And our next guest is going to be with me because our guest, not our next guest, but our first guest here, you might recognize this man here. Does this guy look familiar to you? Bobby Barack from Outkick is with us. Now, Bobby was with me on Tuesday. We had so much fun. If you missed Tuesday's Life with Mary Walter podcast, I highly recommend you go back and watch it. He was just going to teach me about Tinder, right? And boy, did we get off on a tangent, Bobby. We went off into dating and what to look for. It was great. It was a really fun conversation. Thank you for coming back.
I would say of all the conversations on the internet, I think, Mary, you and I offer better life advice together. So maybe we thought we were doing each other a service, but I think it was really your listeners who made out best.
Well, you know what? Also, the viewers, let me tell you, you guys had there were a lot of comments from you guys. Really appreciate them. If you're watching on YouTube, if you make a comment, I can pull it up onto the screen. And in order to keep it not so crazy for people just listening to the audio on Apple or Spotify, I only put them up if they, are timely or have something to do with what we're talking about. So please don't be offended if I don't read it out loud or I don't put it up on the screen. But we got some great comments from the listeners, a lot of great hints from the listeners too. So it's a really fun look at dating and what men are looking for, what women are looking for. And then we kind of went off into just like manners and treating each other nicely and all sorts of things. So it was a lot of fun. So I'm so glad you're here with me. So, since you're a regular, Bobby, what's the first thing we do? We have to see who got in first, right? Because the regulars have their little contest. And this is a rare one, and I think this is hilarious. At 7:06, Ron beat Al, Ron beat Bill, Ron beat everybody. Congratulations. Then we got Bill, Bill says, at least I beat Al. How come you always start the podcast at 7:15 and not 7? Just curious. Because people tend to remember if it's like 7:10 or 7:15 as opposed to 7 o'clock. It's like if you want people to really remember a meeting, you make it at a weird time. You say like 7:05 or 7:10. People tend to remember that more than if you just say 7. Or they'll go, is it 7 or 7:30 if you have it on the half hour? So that's why people remember.
Well, I think that needs to be in your updated hypothetical Tinder bio, right? Say, don't pick me up at 5, do 5:15. I mean, again, this is all just hypothetical as we talked about Tuesday, but I think that's a great golden rule that I've never thought of before.
Yeah, because people go, it was a 5 or 5:30. I can't remember. Because all meetings are like the top or the bottom of the hour. So if you make it at a different time, I forget where I learned this, but it had something to do with corporate America and meetings and things like that. If you want people to remember, they're much more likely to remember a meeting at 7:15 than they are at 7 or 7:30. So there we go. Bill, haha, Al, I beat you. Al, oh, because Al finally is here. I've been watching this banner to pop up since 6:55. I was a little behind today. Apologies. I clocked in like a minute late. I didn't start everything till 7:11 with the countdown, so I apologize. But again, a little bit of a crazy evening for here. Scott says, nice weight music. Like to know the band, the artist. I have no idea. It's just music that you can use for free without having them come after you and censor your podcast, and then they take it down and everything. So it was just some free music. So I wish I knew more. Let's see. Bill, I got you showing up early. My video camera is on, Mary. Clearing throat. Okay. Where do we like the podcast? Must mean this live video then. Yeah, the live video. You just like it. That you can go back into YouTube afterwards and just click the thumbs up. We really appreciate that. Oh, Barry's here. Do you remember Barry from Tuesday? He's like, yeah, I'm just here with Cy. We're smoking some pot.
Of course.
Yeah.
He was actually my odds-on favorite to be the first one in the chat today. I actually had him ahead of Al in the rankings, so good to see Barry join us, but I would have thought he would have been here a bit sooner.
He's smoking again, so he's probably a little sloth-like. No. I wish I could move the YouTube video player button to the left, and I don't know. Sorry. Barry, I don't remember stuff. I'm not going to say. Yes, Scott, this is live, honey. This is live. I'm reading your comment right now. All right. Let's move, because there's a lot of things I want to get to. I'm not going to go too late tonight because I have to prep for a show tomorrow now, since I will be in for Todd Starnes starting at noon, and noon to 3 Eastern time. But and Bobby will be joining me tomorrow on the show as well. This piece that you wrote for Outkick is really getting a lot of play. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about it on Twitter. Yeah. It's a really interesting piece, and it's this is what the fall of woke influence looks like. And I think you've put your finger on a trend that people are starting to notice of it, really comedians pushing back on the culture of censorship and of silencing people and canceling people. And it really started with Dave Chappelle. I think you could disagree with me since you did the research, but I really think it started with Dave Chappelle. And Dave Chappelle refused to apologize. And so many people apologize. I'm like, don't apologize. Never apologize. Because once you apologize, you think it's going to be over, but they just destroy you then. You admitted you're wrong. And so they just destroy you, unless you're Whoopi Goldberg or any of the yapping yentas on The View, and then they just let you continue to go on. But if you're conservative, they use that. They smell blood in the water once you apologize, and they circle and they come after you. So why did you write this piece? What made you say, we're starting to see a fall in woke influence in our culture?
Yeah, so it's actually somewhat of a long process how I got here. Last week now, trended all week what is woke? People were disputing. The left was trying to say most conservatives can't even define the term, and there was about a lot of discussion about, well, what is it? What does it come to mean? How effective is it? So I really sat back and thought about it. Well, what is woke? And Mary, I came to the conclusion that what woke has come to mean is essentially a movement to replace societal norms and societal status with identity and association, meaning that you're going to succeed and fail and get fired and get promoted and have cachet based on your identity, whether it be your race, your sexual orientation, your skin color, your political leanings, your ideology. So I got that out of the way. And I thought, well, how many people actually agree with this? Because it seems so absurd. So I did the research, and only 8% of the electorate actually agrees with what woke has come to mean. So you take that a step further. Well, how has this thing been so influential, so powerful, so dictating with so little support? And I go back to the quote that I include in the article by Andrew Breitbart: politics is downstream from culture. So I took it from there and started to research. He's absolutely correct. Wokeism originated with culture. They were able to capture the forms of messaging from entertainment to Hollywood to academia to sports to big tech. So, what they're able to do is they were able to make woke seem far more influential than its size would suggest. The population didn't agree, but those in power, those in influence, they fell for the ruse. So the only way to keep this movement going is to make sure those messengers, whether it be comedians, actors, athletes, and big tech algorithms, continue to support the message. But we're starting to see them push back. Twitter isn't rigged as much anymore now that Elon Musk has taken over. His chief mission is to quote unquote unrig the algorithm. Dave Chappelle pushed back, as you said, a year ago. Chris Rock came out against wokeism. Comedian Russell Brand, not a conservative, not a Republican, he took his platform to Rumble and is now railing against the same big media he used to parrot. And Netflix, the largest streamer in the country, there's a profile. They're totally doing a woke reversal. They dismiss shows about men having babies and anti-racist programming. That's gone. They've instead doubled down on controversial commentary from Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock and shows that cater to middle America. So if you take this full circle, if politics is downstream from culture, which I believe it is, culture is shifting. It's shifting away from the woke. So if this continues to escalate, it will eventually hit politics next. So I would say this is the beginning of the fall of the woke influence because they no longer have a monopoly on the messaging.
It's interesting. You talk about Netflix, and when I was reading your piece, I thought about Netflix, and I thought it's so interesting because they they have Susan Rice on their board. They're very up. They have the Obamas producing pieces and things like that. And I thought, oh, it's time to get rid of my Netflix. I'm going to have to get rid of that. But when they fired the workers who were screaming about, was it last year, 2 years ago, Dave Chappelle's first
Right.
special that he did, where he talked about Jussie Smollett and he talked about transgender and that type of thing, and he wasn't politically correct about it. And remember that a whole bunch of their employees, said, well, we're going on strike if you don't cancel Dave Chappelle. And Netflix was at a moment where they had to figure out what they were going to do. And they were bleeding subscribers anyway. So they took the opposite tact. And as you said, they said, no, we're going to let this stand. And if you don't like it, you can leave. And most corporations, up until that point, have not done that. They have caved to the mob every time. And again, caving to the mob, you're done. Why hand over your company to this mob of crazy people? So
Well,
Netflix didn't. And now, as you point out, they have more subscribers. Their revenue's going up because people are going just to see Dave Chappelle. People are going to just see Chris Rock. They're starting to get these comedians now who have a home where they can actually be funny and they can speak truth to power in a fun way and people laugh at it, and people are maybe learning how to I guess, learn how to laugh again. We forgot how to laugh at ourselves. And this is so, it gives me a lot of hope when I see these comedians starting to break through and I see a company like Netflix saying, nope, I am not apologizing to you people anymore. You need to learn how to live in the real world. So to me, that was one of the first things I thought of. So what do you think? Susan Rice Obamas are don't have influence as much on Netflix anymore?
No, I don't think they do. I think that there's been a really change in Netflix culture. In Daily Mail, I think profiled it well. They went from losing subscribers for quarter after quarter, and last quarter of 2022, when they made these changes, they actually added some 7 million subscribers. It was complete 180 momentum wise. And when they got rid of those programs that really nobody watched, but they were good for political messaging and PR. So I do think Netflix, even if it wasn't a corporate change as far as who's in the office and the CEO and the board, it does seem like the people in charge have at least decided, hey, no matter who's on this board, no matter who's in this room, we're not going to allow them to dictate content like we've had for the past 3, 4, even 5 years. I want to go back to what you said about Chappelle. I think what Chappelle and Netflix did, and I put this in the piece, they exposed cancel culture as a paper tiger. Like, think when you're in second grade, there's that bully on the playground. Everybody's afraid of him. But when he's finally knocked down, he gets up no longer as fear. Once you expose these people and show they're not nearly as frightful as they think they are and you think they are, it's much easier for other people to push back. And what Chappelle and Netflix did in 2021 at the end of it is they showed how easy it is to actually beat these guys. All you have to do is not comply. If you don't apologize, if you don't self censor, if you don't atone, and you don't try to make amends, what can they actually do? Cancel
Right.
culture was a complete product of compliance, of targets obeying or their bosses obeying for them by canceling them. If those two things don't happen, cancel culture has no legs.
It's very true. Smart observance. Scott says woke is not realizing the stranger you talk to, but you're looking at them and judging them. They may have some acquired status. Just forget about it. That's all. It's true. We judge people based on their status, not who they are. He said. Barry says, "Screw the woke losers." Um, let's see. Al, Karl Marx explains using wokeism to change the political nature of the country. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be surprised if, yeah, a lot of this is Marxism.
yeah, it is. Really, what wokeism did too is it sort of tried to rank society based on what I call the hierarchy of victimhood. And white males are at the very bottom. They have no cards. But if you have the race card or the sexism card or now the LGBTQIA, however many more letters it goes, if you have that card, you're golden. You have all sorts of credibility because you can define yourself as a victim. Wokeism, coming from Marxism, is really an escalation of Marxism and the progressive movement. It divided society by oppressors and victims, bad guys, good guys, all based on the traits that they were either born with or decided politically. It took away the independence of a person. I always make the reference 15 years ago, John went to the market is the story. Now it's John, who was a white, straight, conservative male, went to the market. We prioritize that middle part of the sentence more than the
Yes.
subject in the action. And I find that pretty frightening that John, his color, his political affiliation, and sexual orientation is more important than him
Yep.
and what he is doing as the action. You see that so much. I mean, there are people on The View who make racist remarks all the time. But what it
Hmm.
is, Whoopi Goldberg, a black woman who is liberal, makes this remark. Therefore, the mob and the media don't consider it racist.
Yeah, and to your point, I think they're a bunch of bullies. The bully analogy I think was perfect because if you look at the people who are woke, they just scream really, really loudly, but they're the misfits of society. They really are. It's all beta males and these women who I I don't want to come off as being judgy, but if you look at them, there are certain traits about them that are all the same. A lot of them have a boatload of problems. They're victimhood. I've got ADD, I've got ADHD. I'm manic depressive, I'm this, I'm that. There's a lot of victimism in them. Like they can't function in normal society and they've got all these problems and they always have an excuse as to why they can't work, why they can't do this, why they can't do that. And it's never their fault. It's always just, like, oh, woe is me, or someone did it to me, so therefore I can't function. They're very beta when they come right down to it. So they just scream at you and they try to scream you into submission.
Right.
And I think people have had enough and they pick up and they walk away. I just want to put this up here. Al said, if all the small groups are fighting amongst each other, they cannot unite to put down a government takeover. White being demonized have broken up into these groups because we are the majority. They needed to break us up into smaller groups. Well, we're not the majority for long. I got news for you. But I, for one, am looking to being a favored minority class. So
Me too.
I'm just
Me
wondering if
too.
I get all the same. Do I get all the same benefits? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I'm wondering, like, does that mean like I get to automatically get a promotion? Because a lot of people do, right? Like as Chris Rock's
Right.
point is that so many people are getting promotions now, not because of their skill, but because somebody else got fired and they checked off the right boxes. I mean, it really is just such a mess. And the entire thing is a major contradiction. I mean, the anti-racists are the biggest racists now. I mean, the
Uh-huh.
supposed free speech advocates are the biggest proponents of censorship. I mean, it's all a lie that society just kind of sat idly by and allowed happen because of fear. And I'm so hopeful that people are not going to sit back and take this anymore because, I mean, it's so backwards. And most people, like your commenter said, are not benefiting from this. The majority doesn't like this. The study showed that 92% of people don't want the country to be like this, particularly culturally. And it is. I mean, universally, until the past year or so, there's been no major institution that has not been infested by wokeness from top down.
Yeah, absolutely. To that point, look at this administration.
Yeah.
It's not, they didn't pick people based on competence. Joe Biden made no bones about the fact that his vice president would be a black woman.
Right.
Well, he kind of painted himself into a box and look at what his vice president is. Look at that. I mean, it's just a bundle of incompetence. I mean, his administration is a circus of dysfunction. Look at Karine Jean-Pierre, KJP. She can't do the job. I
Right.
mean, I guess she does the job masterfully for an administration like the Biden administration. She just doesn't answer questions. And she just looks, she goes, I'm not answering. Now,
Yes.
because she is a Democrat, the media doesn't press back on her. But if she were a Republican and just said, well, I'm just not answering that question, they would be screaming at her a la Jim Acosta, at President Trump. That's what would be happening. So she kind of gets a free pass and they're still enabling that. But the press is not happy with this, you know, box checker with a binder who's supposed to be, briefing them and not answering any of their questions. The act is growing really thin with the press. She's gay and she's black. Boom, boom, 2 check marks. Press secretary. Have you been watching the hearings?
Yeah.
They're fascinating. I highly recommend everybody watch them. I know it sounds really boring, but for these judges that the Biden administration is putting up trying to get confirmed, you have John Kennedy from Louisiana. Ever since Louis Gohmert left, he is now my favorite congressman, John Kennedy, because he's hilarious and he's such a wordsmith. He makes me laugh. But he asks them, could you tell me what the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution does? And they're like, oh, the Fifth Amendment. I'm sorry, that's not coming to mind. He asked somebody what a Brady protection is or something, and the Brady motion. Even I know what that is. It's hiding, it's exculpatory evidence. You got to provide all evidence exculpatory and not to the other side. And the guy he was talking to couldn't answer the question. He's already a judge and can't answer the question. And the Biden administration wants to elevate them. But they want to elevate these people not because they're qualified, but because they're ideologues. And they represent this small portion of the population you're talking about. And that's where I fear this. This is where I fear this whole woke ideology not falling, because they're becoming not institutionalized. That's the wrong word. But they're starting to run our institutions. When you have these activist judges who are so woke on our benches, there goes, fair trials and all that stuff out the window. Look what's happening with January 6th defendants in Washington, D.C. When you've got a woke judge,
Right.
he's stripping them of their rights and doesn't care.
Yeah, and that goes back to that quote I keep referencing and mention the piece of politics is downstream from culture, wokeism did originate in culture. Like all of a sudden, well, newsrooms have gone woke in entertainment. Then
Yep.
eventually it downstreams to what I think is the most frightening, the military. I mean, we see stories every week about the military undergoing this training and wanting to put trans people who say they're males in the front lines and all that. So you start in newsrooms and entertainment, you think, well, it's not that big of a deal. Just don't watch those shows, don't consume that comedy. Well, sure, I get that, but look what it morphs into: a woke military, a woke justice system. I mean, those are institutions that cannot and should not be politicized because it wrecks the foundation of the country. So this is far more important than just some comedian not being able to joke, which is bad enough because it just contradicts the entire state of the country. But when you have a military that wants to put unqualified and incapable people on the front line just because they say all of a sudden they're a male and they're not really not, I mean, to me, that should be the headline in all of this wokeism and the trajectory of the movement when the military has to sacrifice to box check.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bobby will be joining me tomorrow, 1:35 Eastern Time. Go to KWAM online or search for KWAM on TuneIn. I'll be in for Todd Starnes tomorrow. Uh, Now, you can stay if you would like, or you can beat feet if you got to go. Totally up to you.
Yeah, well, appreciate you having me on, and we'll chat tomorrow.
All right, so then you're going to go now?
Yeah, I am. Yep, and we'll chat tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Bobby Brock from Outkick. The article is This is What the Fall of Woke Influence Looks Like with Bobby Brock. And I will put a link in the description of this video on YouTube so you can check it out for yourself. So let's see, where are we? KWAM, yes. KWAM, yes, Scott. Yes, thank you. So, okay, so this plays into what we were just talking about. And this wokeism and I don't know if this is wokeism or if it's just so much as corruption. Two stories I want to talk to you about and just share with you because I don't know if you've seen them. Now, this first one has gotten play in the media today. It came up yesterday and I was like, oh, too bad I'm not on the air tomorrow meeting today. I was like, oh, I could talk about this today. So I saved it for tonight's podcast. It's from the New York Post. And there's a guy named Dr. Gal Luft. Luft is a former Israeli Defense Forces lieutenant colonel who has deep intelligence ties in Washington and Beijing. All right, so he's in the spy game. The House Oversight Committee is investigating some claims that he made. He first made claims on February 18th on Twitter. After he was detained at a Cyprus airport, he was planning to get on a plane to go back to Israel. Here's what he tweeted out. I've been arrested in Cyprus on a politically motivated extradition request by the US. The US is claiming I'm an arms dealer. It would be funny if it weren't tragic. I've never been an arms dealer. DOJ is trying to bury me to protect Joe, Jim, and Hunter Biden. Shall I name names? Question mark. So the House Oversight Committee is investigating this. He claims he was arrested to stop him from revealing what he knows about the Biden family and FBI corruption. And he told the DOJ details in 2019, and he claims that those details were ignored. This is interesting. So he is in jail now in Cyprus, awaiting extradition to the US. He has an American lawyer and an Israeli lawyer. His American lawyer is named Robert Hennick. He says that 4 years ago, his client, Dr. Gal Luft, tried to inform the DOJ that a company called CEFC, which we heard that name many, many times in connection with Hunter Biden and the Bidens. It's a Chinese state-controlled energy company. So that company, he claims, had paid $100,000 a month to Hunter Biden, and also paid $65,000 to Joe's brother Jim, and they did it in exchange for their FBI connections and use of the Biden name to promote China's Belt and Road Initiative around the world. So they were influence peddling. If this is true, this is what they were buying. They were buying influence and FBI contacts, allegedly, from Hunter and Jim Biden. And this looks as now, we got a lot of payments Nobody knows where the money's coming from. No one knows what the money's for. Well, this guy allegedly told the DOJ in 2019 what was going on, where this money was coming from from a Chinese controlled energy company. He learned about this through his own relationship with Hunter's Chinese business partners, Patrick Ho and Yi Jinping. Yi Jinping is the chairman of the Chinese energy company CEFC. From 2015 to 2018, Lutz organized international energy conferences in partnership with Patrick Ho's think tank, the nonprofit Chinese Energy Fund Committee, CEFC USA, which was a front organization for Yi Jinping's CEFC, which he is the chairman of. So they're both working for the Chinese-controlled energy company, basically the Chinese government, communist government, one through an American fund committee and the other through this energy company. All right, but both for energy and growing China's energy sector. All right, so that's what it's about. Now, Yi, who was the chair of the Chinese energy company, told Luft that Hunter had an informant in the FBI, quote, or formerly of the Bureau, extremely well placed, who they paid lots of money to provide sealed law enforcement information. So, in other words, Hunter Biden, according to this allegation, had an FBI informant who either was active or had been active with the FBI, and they were funneling money. So, Hunter's getting $1,000. Hunter's getting how much a month? Hunter was getting $100,000 a month, according to this whistleblower, from the Chinese government through this company, and then he was taking money and paying these FBI informants, this FBI informant, to get sealed law enforcement information. Now, what would that do? The FBI mole was called. Are you ready? One Eye. I think it's pretty easy to find One Eye. I would think. I would think that One Eye might be really easy to find. So One Eye. One Eye told Yi, the chair of the Chinese energy company, that the SDNY, Southern District of New York, was investigating Yi and or Ho, the two Chinese communist guys who were head of these two committees, these two Chinese companies, in late 2017. Also told them that an Asian, an African, and a Jewish guy were named on a sealed indictment. It sounds like a bad joke. An Asian, an African, and a Jewish guy walk into a bar. Okay. Now, this is what Yi allegedly told this Dr. Gal Luft, who is deep in the intelligence agency with deep ties to Washington and Beijing. He's an Israeli. And he told this to the DOJ, and the DOJ ignored it. Now, soon after Yi got that tip off that he's being investigated, right, from the FBI, got the tip off from the FBI through Hunter that he's being investigated, he offered Hunter $1 million to be his private counsel, his lawyer. Now, this is when Hunter was deep in the throes of his addiction. And I remember seeing this, that Hunter was, a lawyer, and he represented a Chinese communist figure, head of a Chinese firm run by the Chinese communists, and everybody was like, he was like deep in his addiction at that time. Why would they hire him to be their lawyer? Why would the communist Chinese hire Hunter to be their lawyer? And so we now know that the allegation is he offered to pay Hunter $1 million to be his private counsel, and he flew back to China, and he left his wife, his daughter, his son, his mother, and his nanny in New York in a $50 million townhouse off Central Park. He was like, see ya, and he was out. He was detained in Shanghai 3 months later, and then he disappeared. So maybe going back to China wasn't such a good idea, but he was allegedly being investigated here, so he went to China, and then he disappears. This is like a spy novel. Before he left New York, he told Ho, his Chinese counterpart, that the coast was clear for him to come back to the U.S. Ho could come back to the U.S. Now, on November 18th, 2017, Ho flew to JFK Airport, and when he got there, he was arrested by FBI agents on bribery and money laundering charges. The lawyer for the guy who is now in jail, the Israeli in jail in Cyprus, who says, I had all this information, told the FBI about it, DOJ about it, told the DOJ about this FBI informant who's being bribed to give secrets to Hunter Biden to funnel to the Chinese. He says that he was the patsy. Ho was the fall guy. He's the guy who went down on money laundering charges, not Hunter Biden, not Yi, although Yi's disappeared. So maybe it would have been better. Ho went down on the money laundering charges. Ho was convicted in December 2018 without a single witness being called, and he served 3 years in jail and then was deported. Hunter was paid $1 million by CEFC to rep Ho. Now, he had been offered to pay to rep Yi, but Yi beat feet, so they paid him then $1 million to represent Ho. But to do that, the claim is being made by this informant that entailed contacting his FBI sources on Ho's behalf to get inside information and getting another attorney to do the legal work. And this is according to emails on Hunter's laptop. So this information comes from Hunter's laptop. And of course, he had to hire a lawyer to do the work because Hunter wasn't capable of doing the work. I don't know if Hunter sober is capable of being a lawyer. CEFC then paid another almost $5 million to Hunter and Jim Biden in monthly installments for 14 months from August of 2017 on. The House Oversight Committee released bank statements last week showing an additional $1,065,000 was funneled from a Chinese company affiliated with CEFC to Hunter, Jim, and Hallie Biden. No one knows why. What services did Hallie Biden, a school teacher, provide to the Chinese energy company in order to get money? The payments were made in increments over 3 months through Hunter Biden associate Rob Walker. Rob Walker's wife, Betsy, had been a personal assistant to, at the time, Second Lady Dr. Jill Biden. It's very incestuous, It's a crime syndicate, absolute crime syndicate. Luft, the Israeli informant, claims he contacted the DOJ after Ho went to jail, and federal investigators flew to Brussels to interview him for more than 18 hours on March 28th and 29th of 2019, or in the midst of the election, right? In the midst of all the campaigning, March 2019, a year and a couple of months before, year and a half, maybe before the 2020 election. But he never heard from them again, and less than 4 weeks later, Joe Biden announced he was running for president. Okay, so Joe hadn't even announced yet because Joe didn't campaign. Who am I kidding? I forgot Joe didn't campaign. There was no campaigning by Joe. So that was wrong. Sorry. The DOJ had this information March 2019 and did nothing. According to Luft's lawyer, Congress has the Biden bank records, but it doesn't know the reason for the payments, and now it does. The information that the whistleblower, Dr. Luft, gave the DOJ 4 years ago is the missing link for the reason behind the China-Biden money transfers. This is explosive stuff. So it's no surprise that this guy's been arrested in Cyprus on his way to Israel, and the U.S. is claiming he's a weapons dealer. It's like, I'm not a weapons dealer. I've never been a weapons dealer. But I bet you they can make it stick because the government can make anything stick if they want, right? I don't think they're the most trustworthy people. His lawyer, Hennick, has been speaking to congressional investigators, and James Comer confirmed that to the New York Post last week. Luft, is the Israeli informant, is well connected in intelligence circles in D.C. He runs a think tank called the Institute for Analysis of Global Security. Former CIA Director James Woolsey and former National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane are advisors to this think tank. Now, in Israel, his attorney there, Mordecai Tzivin, was quoted in the Jerusalem Post saying that Luft's arrest was a good way to shut him up because he has a lot of information on Hunter. He also suggested that powerful people might want Luft to disappear. If this would have happened in Russia, they would have carried out a diplomatic car crash, but luckily he is in a safe location where no one can hurt him. That's crazy. Totally explosive stuff. totally. And I know there's a lot of names, and I know it's like a bowl of spaghetti, and you pull on this string, and this comes up, right? But that's what crime syndicates are. You got to make that board that you see on the crime shows where they got the central figure and they got all the people in the circles and the arrows and the lines connecting this person to this person to this person. When you look at it, it's pretty simple. Hunter, through Biden's, maybe Joe knows about it. However, Hunter had allegedly an informant inside the FBI who had access to sealed documents, sealed evidence, and funneled that evidence to Hunter. And then Hunter funneled it to the Chinese, and the Chinese in turn paid Hunter millions of dollars. And I don't know if there's bank records showing payments from Hunter through somebody else. I'm sure Hunter funneled money through somebody else to get it to his informant in the FBI. Because why would the guy in the FBI do it? Just out of kindness? Because Hunter's such a great guy? I'm sure there was money funneled. So a lot of missing pieces. Again, these are allegations. We don't know. But oh my gosh, it never, ever, ever ends. This is crazy. Oh, excuse me, I have the hiccups. Okay. Where are we? Let me just see. Al says, so Biden putting an extradition hold is blowing up in his face. I don't know if it's blowing up in his face. We have to see. Let's see. Scott says, we always expect that anything with the FBI or U.S. government persons' names on it to always be kosher. You're right. We just assume, oh, it's the FBI. It must be right. It must be legit. I don't trust that. I got to tell you, I went from trusting our government entities to forget it. You knock on my door, FBI. I want to see your warrant. Nope, not talking to you. Get a lawyer. I'm. Although I will say a couple of years ago, I did speak to an FBI agent voluntarily over the phone because someone who had screwed me over in the radio business and owed me a lot of money, they were looking into him for fraud and things like that. And so I was more than happy to talk to them. I gave them like, what do you want? Let me help you out here. I've been waiting for this moment for like over 10 years. I'm more than happy to do this. Let's go. I was like, yeah, pull up a seat. Scott, it's amazing how being at the apex of a state power allows someone to define correctness of their own activities as they go. That only works for Democrats. That does not work for Republicans. Yeah, sounds like protective custody. Yeah. Al, I stopped trusting the government in 1843. Well, Al is a lot older than I. John List. John, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're watching. John was one of my producers. We got to work together on a morning show. We had so much fun. I adore John. I got him in so much trouble on a daily basis, and it was great. And he would just come, but he knows exactly who I'm talking about because John was screwed over by the same person in radio. So, John, I'm so glad you're watching. So glad you're here with me. Thank you. It's funny what brings people together, isn't it? Okay, one more thing, and then I got to run. Then we're going to run, I promise. So we kind of hit on this with Bobby Barack when we were talking about wokeness and government institutions, and this dovetails perfectly with not trusting the government. So the January 6th, the Proud Boys, they've been demonized. They're horrible people. They're Nazis. They're this, they're that, they're everything else. And listen, I think on January 6th, if you did something wrong, if you did something violent, I do believe you should be held accountable for your actions. I don't believe that if you walked through doors that were being held open by the Capitol Police and you went into Statuary Hall, took some pictures and left, you should have your life ruined. But that's what's happening. There's very few public defenders who are willing to help them because it's in DC and they're all woke and they don't want their careers ruined by helping them. That's the first thing. But the judges are also woke and they're not playing the game fairly. And I've had Julie Kelly on a number of times on different shows that I've done, and she does such great work. Follow her on Twitter. It's Julie_Kelly and the number 2. So listen, this is, again, how many people said, oh, feds being embedded in the crowd on January 6th. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Prove it. Well, look what happened. Okay. Right now, the Proud Boys are in front of a judge in Washington, D.C. And the judge is Tim Kelly. The judge's name is Tim Kelly. I haven't heard this one. Tim Kelly's a new one for me. But it's in Washington, D.C., so I assume he's very liberal. Okay. So there's a new emergency motion from the defense counsel in one of the Proud Boys cases. His name is Zachary Real. And they're stating that the government waited until yesterday, March 22nd, to tell the court, this is the prosecution, this is the government. They waited till yesterday to tell the court that one of the defense witnesses who's going to testify, one of the defense witnesses testifying for the Proud Boys, right, has been a confidential human source. In other words, a spy within the Proud Boys since April 2021 through at least January 2023. So basically, since the beginning of the case through the start of the trial. So they had someone embedded in the Proud Boys, the government, a confidential human source in the someone who is a defendant's inner circle. Now, yesterday was the day before that person was scheduled to testify for the defense. Now, according to reporting by Julie Kelly, prosecutors knew back in December that defense planned to call this person as a witness, but they didn't tell the court and they didn't tell the defense. So they knew, prosecutors knew back in December, and the individual continued to work as an informant, spying on defense during preparation for the trial. And then funneling that information back to the prosecution. So the prosecution, the government, had a spy in the defense's team while they're prepping their defense for the trial. And he's on the other side. I'm pretty sure that's not legal, but I'm also pretty sure that in this case with the Proud Boys, they're so hated and so reviled, it's not going to matter. They're going to go, oh, well, sorry, our bad. Should have told you about that. I'll bet you nothing happens with this. The Proud Boys public defender named Carmen Hernandez filed an emergency motion requiring the government to disclose to the defense all reports and recordings relating to individuals who may have been FBI informants. This is not withholding evidence stuff again that we keep seeing from the left. We see it with Alvin Bragg. We see it, with the January 6th defendants, withholding exculpatory video, etc. Not telling them that, oh, by the way, that guy sitting over there who's gonna testify in your defense, he's one of our guys. Sorry. And they would know exactly what he's gonna say. They would know exactly what their witness is gonna say because he's one of them. The four other Proud Boy defendants, Nathan Norden, Joseph Biggs, Enrique Terrio, and Dominic Pizzola, joined in the request. Zachary Real has been denied for bail for 2 years. He's been held in pre-trial detention for 2 years by the judge, despite being a non-violent participant. Non-violent, but they have kept him jailed for 2 years. His right to a speedy trial, gone. All that stuff. Mike here says, I bet you're right. Nothing will happen to them. Yeah. They're allowed to strip people. Look at one of the judges, that is hearing, there's going to be apparently charges coming up to Trump with the documents case, right? He just ruled that Trump's lawyer has to testify against him. So the lawyer has to testify against the defendant. What happened to client attorney privilege? Gone if you're Trump. Gone if you're, this is the two-tier justice system, and it's scary because we were all equal under the law, unless you're Trump or unless you're a Republican. Okay. So they were supposed to, the prosecution was supposed to, the DC U.S. Attorney's Office was supposed to respond by 9 a.m. today. As of this afternoon, they had not responded. They had not responded. Al says, for walking into a public building during normal working hours when it would be open to the public. Yep, exactly, Al, exactly. And they're saying there's going to be up to 1,200 more people arrested in connection with January 6th. Let's see. Kelly stated, Kelly being the judge, there is a, quote, missing document in the numerical list on the document, which indicates the DOJ response is, quote, under seal. And anything they don't want the other side to see, they just put it under seal. Sorry, we can't let you see that. You can't see that. It's classified information. They've done that in the past. And then when somebody forces it to be unsealed, you find out there was nothing damaging or dangerous or classified or anything along those lines in there. Okay. Court papers revealed that the confidential human source, are you ready for this, has been in contact with the defense counsel and at least one defendant. The documents show that the CHS has communicated through a variety of channels with the defense and the defendant, and also participated in prayer meetings with members of one or more of the defendant's families. The confidential human source, spy, has also allegedly discussed replacing one of the defense counsels with one of the defendant's family members. So in other words, you should get rid of the lawyer. You should do it. You're way better than that lawyer. And he's working for the prosecution. This is crazy stuff, and no one's discussing it. Yeah, Trump tried to get it past the court. So and he kicked it up to a higher court. Sorry, so Scott, and he was told no, your lawyer has to testify against you. Okay. It seems the government has been selective with the defense about the disclosures of the spy. Some were fully disclosed earlier, and others were somehow conveniently disclosed at the last minute. Julie Kelly also reported, and I think we talked about this, I'm not 100% sure, so I'll just tell you very quickly. I'm getting old, I forget stuff. That on March 14th, one of the FBI lead investigators named Nicole Miller, who is assigned to the Proud Boys case, allegedly exchanged emails with another agent proving, quote, the FBI monitored privileged communications between one of the defendants and his attorney in 2021. Again, attorney-client privilege. But I guess it just doesn't apply depending on who you are. Now, jurors in the case never heard all of this with the spying on the defendant and one of the defendants and his attorney, because the judge stopped the testimony, abruptly stopped and dismissed the jury and said out of the courtroom, because he didn't want them to hear this, because they might not get a conviction. Did dismiss the jury. He said he wanted to, quote, press pause on the trial, and the jury trial was set to resume the next day, but it never did. Instead, Kelly decided to hear both sides without the jury present. It happened on March 8th. The next day, he decided to hear both sides without the jury present. I want the jury to hear any of this. God forbid the jury hear all of the evidence. Can't have that. All right. Okay. Kelly, this is from Julie Kelly. Kelly, the judge, outside the eyes and ears of the jury, held a hearing with both sides on March 9th to determine how to proceed after the defense team found messages indicating that FBI agents doctored internal reports, destroyed evidence, and tipped off prosecutors about defense strategy on one of the government's highest profile January 6th cases, spying on them, talking to their lawyers. Nicole Miller, that agent, had prepared a spreadsheet of material called Jenks material that cataloged internal messages related to the case, internal in the FBI to the case. Now, according to Kelly, about 12,000 rows of messages were hidden. They were hidden behind a secret tab, but the defense found those hidden 12,000 messages that they were hiding or attempting to hide from the defense, even though it's evidence they have every right to see. One of the messages was allegedly from a confidential human source or spy to Nicole Miller, asking her to go back into the report and, quote, edit out that I was present. And don't let them know I was there. Take that out. She complied with the request, according to Julie Kelly. She also reported that another agent told one of the lead FBI investigators, Nicole Miller, that an FBI supervisor, quote, instructed the unidentified agent to destroy 338 items of evidence. And she responded in big capital letters, OMG, insane. Now, prosecutors, the government's saying, well, no, the disposal of evidence was routine. Oh, it's just, it's just what we do. It's routine. We need space on the server. And related to, quote, evidence in a 20-year-old case that had been closed. So then why would she say, oh, OMG insane? If it was a closed 20-year-old case, why would she respond with OMG insane in all capital letters? That doesn't make any sense. Sounds to me like the prosecutors are lying. But, what do I know? According to Kelly, the defense also found discussions between Miller and another agent discussing emails between the defendant, Zachary Real, and his former attorney, Jonathan Mosley. Now, according to the judge, the prosecution, the government alleges that the breach of confidentiality, like listening into those, it's okay because Real, the defendant, waived any privilege by using the detention center's monitored email system to communicate with his attorney. Well, you provide him with this way to communicate with his attorney. You can't say then that, oh, well, because you used it, now we have the right to spy on you. Like when they talk on the phone, they're not allowed to listen to what they say to their attorney. When they're in the room with their attorney, they're not allowed to monitor it. But, oh, well, you used the system we gave you. Sorry. They were holding him for 2 years, even though he's not being accused of a violent crime. So he had to communicate with his attorney. And so he did. And they said, well, because you used our system, we had every right to spy on you. It's okay. And the judge is buying it, best we can tell. So we got to get an update somewhere along the way. Let's see. Jerry, this is some serious communist country stuff right here. It is. And nobody's paying attention to it because it's January 6th defendants. They deserved it. That's what I see all over Twitter. These people deserved it. I'm like, oh my God. Don't you think they still have the right to a fair trial, a speedy trial? Don't you think that they shouldn't be in jail if they didn't do anything violent? There are people from the Summer of Love who assaulted police officers and committed arson, destroyed businesses, looted, rioted, etc., and never were charged ever. Or if they had charges, the charges were dropped. But this is okay. It's just insane. So I just wanted to bring that up to you because I just thought this was absolutely crazy. You really should know about this. Scott says you need a wiretap order or something. One would think. He also said FBI agent, also known as someone they just hired off the street. God only knows what they're really capable of outside the Bible, kind of like our police. Listen, I like to think that a lot of the rank and file is really good in the FBI. We know that there's quite a few members of the FBI and DOJ have come forward as whistleblowers, right? Uh-oh, I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. One more. Oh, excuse me. We're getting into allergy season. I've been quite sneezy lately. So there are some who are coming forward as whistleblowers and risking their careers. But this is happening in our courts, and we have judges who are just saying, okay, and allowing the government to lie to explain this stuff away without even asking a question like, well, why did you say that was OMG insane to delete, 20-year-old closed case files? Why would you respond that way? The judge doesn't even ask. So I think these are really, really scary times. Summer of Love rioters got bailed out in part through Kamala Harris's contributions. Jerry's 100% right. That's very true. And that's okay, right? So, all right. I just wanted to leave you with that. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. Please also like the podcast. If you go back to watch older ones, please like them. I appreciate that. You go on YouTube and just look for Mary Walter Radio. Both the Life with Mary Walter and the Mary Walter Radio, the non-political and the political podcast will pop up for you. We really appreciate that. Please tell your friends. Again, because I was on vacation, we didn't do a couple of shows. We got really throttled in the algorithms, and our numbers just plummeted, especially on Getter, because we were a beta tester on Getter. So we had no competition. We had really great numbers on Getter. A lot of people were coming to the podcast. And since we got throttled in the algorithm, and there's so many more podcasts now, so many more live events on Getter, we're really, really getting hammered. So would really like that. Scott says, like the older ones too. Yes, please do. Have a great evening. Yes, thank you. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, Barry, Jerry, both my classmates. Thank you for joining me. Your support means so much. It really does. And I hope you guys understand that. I really am grateful for all of your support. And if James were here, he would say the same thing. Tomorrow, as I said, I will be on KWAM. I'm in for Todd Starnes on the Todd Starnes Radio Network. It's available mostly in the South on local radio stations, but you could also search TuneIn for KWAM, or just if you want to listen online, just go to your computer and you can listen from noon to 3 Eastern time. Tomorrow, Rita Cosby's joining me. Congressman Andrew Clyde will be talking about the TikTok hearings. Bobby Rock will be making another appearance to talk about the woke culture piece. I think it's a great piece. I will put the link in the comments, okay? But before I wrap up the YouTube, it'll be on YouTube, the comments there. It's hard to go back and edit the Getter ones, but I can edit the YouTube. So do that. Saturday, I'm on the Wendy Bell Show, 4:30 Eastern on Saturday, 3:30 on Sunday, 6 a.m. on Monday. And then hopefully on Monday, I will be back on the Chris Salcedo Show as well. So I've got a really busy couple of days coming up, but I appreciate support. Mwah. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a fantabulous weekend. And also don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Mary Walter Radio. Have a great night.